too bad, but how much worse can it get?
Hello, Geeky Lifter here, and I'm here to talk about this flaming dumpster fire of a franchise called Star Wars. First, Rogue One is great. Star Wars: The Clone Wars Season 7, amazing. Rebels, good. Tales of the Jedi, compelling. Unfortunately, that's it. We're going to start off with the sequels. The sequels are cinematic. Are they story-driven? No. The Force Awakens is fun and infuriatingly redundant. The beginning of the movie introduces ideas and themes which are familiar and comforting. The introduction of Force powers, technology, and sci-fi diversity is refreshing. By the middle of the film, you realize it has an unoriginal plot and has the entire recycled plotline of the original trilogy. By the end of the movie, you begin to realize that the writing is poor and the character development is unfortunately very hazy. The death of Han at the hands of his own son should be compelling, but it feels confusing, rushed, and unsatisfying. By the end of the film, it leaves an empty void because there's a lack of originality, a feeling of mismatched chemistry, and motivations that you as an audience member don't fully understand. The cliffhanger at the end adds a spark of hope that these problems may resolve, but alas, we were given The Last Jedi, which is a dark, boring, distracting, and disappointment installment within this trilogy, with one cool fight scene and a poorly done twist. The beginning of the movie leaves a small amount of hope in your system that they may unravel the hazy character motivations, explain character development, reveal necessary plot lines, and tie up potential loose ends to pave the way for a fantastic finale. By the middle of the film, you realize that the writers have no idea where they're going with the story. You begin to realize that they may not make Finn a Jedi, which is not what they were portraying in the first movie, Poe as MIA, and you begin to realize that they have spent a majority of the film not answering any questions that you, as an audience member, need/want to be answered. You begin to realize that there are many other characters that are being introduced that have no significant screen time and that you don't really care about to begin with. You begin to realize the movie is almost over and they're spending time on an unnecessary secondary plotline that you don't even remember by the end of the film. By the end of the movie, you begin to realize that they poured more time and energy with a semi-well choreographed fight scene and the entirety of the rest of the movie. Then it dawns on you, not only did they kill off one of your favorite characters from the first film, they killed off what could be debatably one of the most important characters in the entire Star Wars franchise for very, very poorly written reasons and very mysterious character motivations. It leaves a sense of longing. It draws questions about the film's redundancy. It draws questions about the film's time management. And it leaves perplexing questions like, what the fuck are they going to do with the third movie? Well, don't worry. There comes skipping down the lane is Rise of Skywalker, which is somehow flat and jammed-packed, which is in itself a paradox. The beginning of the movie makes you realize that there are some storylines and scenes that should have been put at other parts of this trilogy for enhanced storytelling and cohesion. And then you realize, oh shit, they're just making up for bad storytelling, huh? Then you realize, oh shit, the bad storytelling isn't going away just because they're aware of it and they're trying to make up for it within its own movie. Somehow, Palpatine returned, and also somehow the writers and producers of this movie could continue working in Hollywood for some reason. By the middle of the film, you realize that they still don't fully have a well-developed script because there are constant reminders of the weak revelations in the movie, weak character motivations, weak character relations, another unclimactic death of a primary trilogy character, and they even throw in a few MacGuffins and a pathetically forced, no pun intended, romance. The jumbled and undeserved climax of this movie is the exact opposite of Avengers Endgame. By the end of the movie, it feels like there is still much more to address and much more that needs to be seen. But it just ends on a note that feels off and undeserved. P.S. Not making Rey Obi-Wan's child was a misstep, but not making Rey a Sith was a major fumble. Each direction would have expanded on either the character of Obi-Wan or Palpatine in a way that would have been enriching to the character depth and motivations of these well-known and prominent Star Wars characters. Obi-Wan fathering a child could show his differences of interpretation of what being a true Jedi is at his older age, but also leaves questions asked to what kind of father is Obi-Wan in relation to his father-like role that he has all throughout Star Wars. Rey's nature could reflect the overall consequences of Obi-Wan's decisions or Obi-Wan's conflicted nature itself. Making Rey into a Sith after she finally realized her origins of being Palpatine's clone's daughter, still yikes, could reveal her true nature and intentions, making a twist ending that could be far more palpable, no pun intended, and compelling, ushering in a new Sith era within the galaxy and leading to more conflict in the future and more compelling storylines. But I digress. From there, you have the anti-rebels, which is Star Wars Resistance, which is like a fish trying to breathe out of water. It tries its best. It tries its best to take itself seriously and to revolve itself around a compelling storyline. However, there is no compelling storyline due to the multiple issues of foundational storytelling from the sequels. The original characters seem uncompelling, the storyline seems pointless, with some decent references thrown in between, but frankly, Star Wars Resistance is just not good. And that's a really bad precedent for after the sequels. Then you have Solo, an irrelevant movie with relevant characters. There are bad character introductions, poorly written dialogue, poor choices for a plot line, poor character motivations. The main character is overshadowed with a 25-second character cameo, which makes the audience wonder, why wasn't the entire movie focused around this character interacting around this character? Plus, an irrelevant romantic storyline which feels robotic instead of grounding the cast with relatable chemistry. The question of Solo is, why didn't they just make a compelling storyline revolving around character development with the backdrop of the crime of the Star Wars underworld? I want to remind you that they seriously spent time in this movie to try to normalize pansexual robot-human relationships. Like, bro, we don't need that. We don't need that. We assume that was already kind of a thing, but we did not need you to address that in this movie. It overshadows a lot of things and really unfocuses the story at many points. And that leads itself to The Mandalorian, which, I'm not gonna lie, really is the most gaslighting show you possibly could have made at the moment. The Mandalorian, the first season, had compelling original characters, a fantastic underlining story from the original trilogy with some respectable references from the sequels. That worked. It took itself seriously, assumed the audience was smart enough to understand complex storylines, and was a new adult take on the franchise that was a refreshing burst of dusty Tatooine air. By the second season, there are more cameos and some yellow flags that the writing was potentially taking a downward turn. The cameos were great, but the new characters were bringing new underlining plot lines that were detracting from the compelling storyline of the first season. Not that the writing itself in the second season was terrible, but they seemed to lack the focus towards the main plot line. After the kick-ass cameo in season 2, there was an assumption that was going right back to its gritty, dark, Western-like origins, and that we were going to focus on the character development of Grogu and Din Djarin. But you know what they say about assumptions. By the third season, the Star Wars curse was in full effect. New characters have been introduced, but not given enough time to understand their complexities or motivations. Or these new characters were just being killed off before they were able to be meaningful at all. Cliffhangers led to anticlimactic conclusions. Secondary and tertiary plot lines were taking over the same space as main plot lines. By the end of the season, the curse of poor time management and poor character focus had fully set in. Then you have Andor, or as I like to call, Solo 4.0, a relevant show with irrelevant characters. In Rogue One, Cassian Andor was a vital element to the success of his group and the movie. His chemistry with Jyn Erso and K2SO added a compelling and important variable to the plot. And Andor seems kind of important, but not overtly talented or skilled. He seems to have the power of luck like Domino does in Deadpool 2. I'm not sure what he brings to the table to have him have his own show. Meanwhile, the plot is average, which is the Empire destroyed my family and home, so now I have to have a vendetta against them. Well, we've been there and done that, but okay. By the end of the season, you find out where the Death Star's glass panels came from, which is cool, I guess. But that is the only plot line that anyone seems to remember, but that's not even the main plot line. Many of the supporting characters are generically rebellious, generically imperial, and are forgettable aside from some characters in some reference to the original trilogy. The best part of the show comes from two of the supporting characters' dialogues and their inner multiple workings between the rebellion and the Empire. However, I will say that seeing the Empire and the galaxy from the perspective of an average person and how much effort and energy they have to put into living their lives around tyranny is important. The dark/gritty themes is overhyped due to some elements feeling like a generic Marvel TV show with no real stakes and unnecessary filler. Then you have The Bad Batch. The Bad Batch did not need Omega. Omega killed the momentum of the show. Instead of the show revolving around 5 uniquely compelling clones, soldiers, who have to find their purpose in a world that has shunned them and forced them to turn on their own family members, which is already compelling enough to begin with, they decided to revolve the story around a poorly written female character who is really nice and respectable. I'll give her character that. Very nice, respectable. But she's a Mary Sue. And they'd be Mary Suing her way around the galaxy with 5 surrogate clone male fathers who have to reprioritize their lives around her and her safety/survival. Because why not? Meanwhile, they're having side quests that lead to uninteresting conclusions, that waste the time of the audience. The poor adoption of sequel elements again, like Project Necromancer, only continues to derail the entire franchise, making it a frustrating and essentially aggravating watch at times, and adding an unnecessary plotline that did not need to involve the Bad Batch at all. They could have had a whole different storyline not related to the sequels and it still would have been good. Having their character development happen through Omega not only seems forced at times, but the chemistry itself feels off. The chemistry that the 501st have with Ahsoka is not well created at all with Omega and the Bad Batch. The finale itself was dull and left the same feeling that I had when watching the sequels, which is, this is it? They're not going to reveal anything else or expand on any more plot lines or ideas? Well, that's kind of lame. Did they need Omega? No. Was it compelling? No. Was it good as the same finale as the Clone Wars? No. And then they decided to introduce this toxic, horrible failure of a show, which is the Book of Boba, which is, unfortunately, an atrocity. This show feels like the writers forgot that Boba Fett is a villain. and a brutal bounty hunter. The character assassination in this story is, no pun intended, palpable. The storyline itself sounds like something out of a Western film. A bad guy comes into a town and brutally rules over it with an iron fist, which is fine. I would have been okay with that type of show. What actually happens is that Boba Fett is just a really nice guy with some trauma and just needed to go on like some soul searching on a journey to find his existential peace, in which he's resolving the problems with other people through immediate violence, but long-term diplomatic and democratic social processes. What the fuck is that? Why does this show exist? What does this show add to the story of Star Wars for the character of Boba Fett? Why is the Mandalorian here? Why is Ahsoka here? Is that Luke Skywalker? Is this show that dull and unoriginal that it needs these many heavy cameos within the same season? What did this show set up to prove other than overshadowing itself with mismatched cameos? This show shows how not to adapt characters for a modern audience in 2024. How not to adapt a car/scooter chase. And how not to honor a foundational character from a long-standing franchise. We wanted something like Punisher from Netflix as Boba Fett, but we ended up getting Smart Hulk from She-Hulk. Well, Star Wars Visions itself is a refreshing take on Star Wars and a frustrating reminder that these small short stories have more original and more creative passion than the canon stories that we have been getting. Not all of Star Wars Vision's short stories are equally on the same level as each other, but they do show that there are multiple avenues and creative options which could have been adapted into a functional/cinematic storyline. Then you have Ahsoka, which is just live action Rebels. The best of Disney Star Wars until episodes 6 and 8. And then you just get the average, normal garbage they've been pushing on people. The plot itself is simple but good. The understanding of character development is written fairly well, and there are multiple Star Wars moments sprinkled in that feel authentic, sincere, and deeply satisfying. The understanding of the importance of the relationships shine in Ahsoka and highlights in many key moments. The issue with Ahsoka is that by the end of season 1, it feels watered down. Thrawn doesn't feel very imposing. His golden zombie troopers are just as useless as regular stormtroopers, which is still a crime. Morgan Elsbeth's character and death was okay, but she feels out of place because there is a lack of understanding of her perspective and motivation. The fight scenes on Peridea feel drawn out and seem like the same filler I would have watched in an anime. Making Sabine a Jedi is a stretch. Having her survive an impalement with a lightsaber is ridiculous. Ahsoka, like all of Disney Star Wars, needed more meaningful dialogue between characters, higher stakes, less filler, and needs to take its entire screenplay more seriously to avoid clunky dialogue, bad fight scenes, redundant scenes, and to utilize its time more effectively. Oh my god. Then we have Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan should have been a slam dunk. A pass through the legs to the overall side post, straight three-pointer, done. Easy. Obi-Wan could have been Obi-Wan Kenobi and Vader in a room just talking for about 2 hours. And it would have had one of the most compelling and if not fan-satisfying scenes, period. However, they decided to take Obi-Wan, who is the retired general of the Galactic Republic, one of the head generals of the Galactic Republic. Again, there was Anakin, Obi-Wan, 1 and 2. Simple as that. Who has PTSD and trauma from all the pain that he had to endure through the Clone Wars, and through his personal betrayal of his friend and brother, Anakin Skywalker. You could have had him go through a soul-searching journey at Tatooine, potentially seeing somebody like a young Anakin Skywalker, understanding his perspective, understanding his turn, having to reconcile his own decisions and consequences to become a fully realized and better version of himself. Meanwhile, Vader could have gone through the same situation, needing to find purpose and meaning within his own pain and suffering with minimal distractions throughout the plot. Instead, they wanted Obi-Wan to go on a soul journey through Leia, whom he didn't have to meet to begin with multiple scenes which are absolutely redundant and absolutely unnecessary. Using Inquisitors sounded like a great idea until you realize that the Inquisitors have poor character motivations. They don't spend any time making you give a shit about them at all, and is just a distracting trope the entire way through the entire plot. Obi-Wan interacting with Vader at first feels off. It feels fake. It feels unrealistic. Vader just popping in and out like a ghost and kind of hitting Obi-Wan. Him being able to hold Obi-Wan in the Force and only drag him through fire seems so uncharacteristic like Vader. It seems like they don't know what Vader would actually do in that situation. Like they don't understand the character of Darth Vader. What we should have got with Obi-Wan is a deep character analysis of Obi-Wan, using his trauma and using maybe flashback scenes from other parts of the movies to reveal his struggle, to reveal his pain, and to have him naturally move through the course of his healing. The interaction with Vader should also have been similar, if not the exact same, because these characters are frankly mirror images of each other from different perspectives. They're brothers. And unfortunately, they spent so much time with Leia, so much time with Inquisitors, so much time on all these secondary things, it takes away from the meaningful character development of Obi-Wan and the meaningful character development of Darth Vader. This show only needed Obi-Wan, Vader, one or two other supporting characters, and a ton of dialogue, which could have flushed out both of these characters' directions and motivations. By the time that Obi-Wan sees Vader face to face, the overly hyped, advertised first encounter, it seems very poorly done. It gives me the same vibes of season 8 of Game of Thrones. Why is it so dark? Why is the dialogue so choppy and off? Why didn't they write more dialogue between these two characters? If anything, Obi-Wan feels like they didn't actually try to make a really good TV show. If this plot, if you gave this to Amazon Prime, you gave that to HBO Max, it would have been nominated for an Emmy. There are so many issues with Obi-Wan, and I'm not saying that it was produced 100% terribly. It's just that it didn't need a lot to be good. And it still wasn't good even when they added extra things to it. It's a shame. It's a real shame. What they did with Ahsoka and Anakin Skywalker in Ahsoka is exactly what we needed in Obi-Wan. But instead, we got what we got. And even in Ahsoka with Anakin and Ahsoka, I still wanted a lot more dialogue. We needed more dialogue. We should have gotten more dialogue, but we didn't. And it's killing this entire franchise and story-driven narrative. Absolutely. And then we have Sith Acolyte. You know what? I'm going to add a scratch noise. I'm not reviewing Sith Acolyte. It's so bad. It's so bad. I don't even have to do a bad review on it. It's just horrible. Even if you don't watch Star Wars and you just know how a TV show is supposed to be produced, how scripts are supposed to be produced, how things are supposed to work within the dynamicy of characters and relations, you can understand within 1 to 2 episodes that this is absolute flaming horseshit. This is like a flaming comet of shit bursting through the mesosphere, exosphere, atmosphere, where you can literally feel it palpably, like this is a giant ball of flaming shit going towards me. I'm just going to move out of the way. It's not good. And I know what a lot of people are saying. Why? It's because women are in it. Why? Because black people are the lead. There's Asians. They went to go on. No, none of that superficial things that I don't even look at to begin with. It's just a poorly done show. It's just bad. It's just bad. I just don't know what to say. It's just fucking bad. It is the worst sci-fi production I have seen in years. Everything I complained about before and more is in this show. This is an indirect essay on how not to produce a TV show or any form of visual media with a script. The Sith Acolyte, the Acolyte or whatever, the show feels like a throwaway 80s sci-fi film. Literally. Everything that could be wrong with the show is in this show. Now, with Disney Star Wars, what's the worst part about it? It's high budget. There's tons of materials and references. There's seasoned writers working on this show and time to produce quality content, and the end result is below average to average movies and shows. There is a systematic flaw in Star Wars, and until the producers and contributors can take accountability for these flaws, don't be surprised for the dumpster fire to continue to become a forest fire, which may consume and destroy more than just this IP, but the trust and assurance that many Star Wars fans put into faceless operators to create fantasy products. Thank you.
Oh, hold up. Sorry. Completely forgot. Tales of the Empire. Horrible. Not good. Not good. Completely forgot about it. This is PS to the viewers. Tales of the Empire, not good. Should have just been like literally General Grievous's origins, which would have been stellar and awesome. This is what everyone's been asking for like literally 20 years that they want to see, but whatever. Morgan Elsbeth, horrible. Literally unnecessary. Forget her. Just forget her. Literally just forget her. She shouldn't even exist really within the story. The Night Sister thing stretched out is meant to make her look cool. It's not. She's not cool. She's not that cool. Should have just been General Grievous. Should have been General Grievous. Just like how you gave Dooku his origins, General Grievous. And if you wanted to do Barriss Offee like you did, that's great. You should have showed her interacting with Vader. You need to be more compelling. Just like, I'm not that bad, I don't want to do this, is not compelling. Not compelling. Just not good. Just a PS. Okay. Thank you for watching.
Well, this isn't too bad, but how much worse can it get?